So we've seen a lot of failed super teams in recent NBA history, whether it was, the Brooklyn Nets or the Phoenix Suns, but cast your mind back to the early 2010s and the 2013 Los Angeles Lakers, who might have been the biggest failed super team in NBA history.
I mean, when you say NBA super team, especially a failed one, this is the team I think of. You had old-ass Steve Nash, Kobe, who was still very good, but getting up there in age, Dwight Howard, one of the best big men in the league, but was just injury-riddled the entire season. Just a complete failure given their insane expectations.
Before we start talking about the 2013 Lakers, if you haven't already, make sure to leave this video a like, give us a subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on one of our videos. So going into the 2012 offseason, the Lakers were coming off their second straight loss in the conference semifinals. Of course, they won back-to-back titles in 2009 and 2010, but they were swept by Dallas in 2011, beaten by the Thunder in 5 in 2012. And with the Spurs and Thunder not going anywhere, teams like the Grizzlies and Clippers on their way up, Lakers felt like they needed to take some big swings to maximize Kobe's final years in the league. To be fair, they tried in 2011 when they agreed to that trade that would have landed them Chris Paul, only for David Stern to nix the deal for quote-unquote basketball reasons. Now, he was technically allowed to do this because at the time the league owned the New Orleans Hornets and were trying to sell them off after the old owners sold them to the league. A league owning their own team and being able to make personnel decisions sounds like a bit of a conflict of interest to me.
I honestly think this is bullshit. I'm not gonna pity the damn Lakers because they're the Lakers. They've gotten everything throughout NBA history, but I think this should have gone through. I mean, I don't really know. This is just such a weird situation, but it's one of the bigger what-ifs in NBA history. Chris Paul and Kobe on the same team. It could have been very special, but instead they end up with an old-ass Steve Nash. In early July, they acquire him in a sign and trade deal. They had to give up their first-round pick in 2013 and 2015, as well as second-round picks in 2013, 2014. I mean, for a sign and trade to give up that much, that's crazy. When the Warriors sent KD to the Nets in their sign and trade, they got back D'Lo, and it was like, oh, that's a nice pickup.
Yeah.
2 first-round picks for a sign and trade.
For Steve Nash. Didn't the Cavs get back 3 first-round picks for LeBron?
Yeah.
Smack dab in the middle of his prime. Also, that 2015 pick wouldn't convey into 2018. The Suns actually had sent it to Philadelphia in the meantime. Philadelphia used that pick on Mikal Bridges, who they then traded back to Phoenix. So, all's well that ends well for the Phoenix Suns, I guess. Your Knicks apparently were pressing hard to get Steve Nash. They were trying to reunite him with Amari, but Nash was apparently talked out of it after, he spoke with Kobe Bryant about the potential of joining the Lakers. Nash is one of the greatest players in NBA history, but he was 38 entering this season. He was a huge defensive liability, and he was injury prone. He had missed 20 games the season prior due to his ailing back.
Oh yeah, the dude's back was messed up at the end of his career.
It was like old Larry Bird type back,
And instead of bringing in, some young players to help the supporting cast, they're like, you know what? Let's bring up more washed up stars. Go out and get Antoine Jameson a couple weeks later, but the big move in early August, Dwight Howard gets traded there from the Magic. The Dwight Howard Magic situation, that's a whole topic for a video on its own. I mean, he demanded a trade in 2012, and it looked like they were going to send him to the Nets. For some reason, that was his preferred destination.
Well, they were about to move to Brooklyn.
Okay, I mean, I guess that was what it took for Dwight to want to go there. But then he decides to opt into his deal. Just shockingly, that made no sense.
There's genuinely no good reason for it, because he would have been able to walk wherever he wanted to in free agency. He could have just re-signed with the Magic too in free agency if he really wanted to stay.
And then the next season, he demands a trade. So just a wild situation there. The Lakers acquire him in a 4-team deal. They got Dwight, Earl Clark, and Chris Duhon. Nuggets get Iggy. 76ers get Andrew Bynum and Jason Richardson. And the Magic, who somehow actually ended up with the best end of this deal, bringing in Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, Vucevic, and a protected first from each of these teams. One of the biggest lose trades in NBA history. Just crazy.
Might be the only lose trade in NBA history. I mean, no one came out out of this looking good. I mean, we'll get to why the Lakers didn't, but Iggy bails on the Nuggets after a year. Bynum basically never played. Did Bynum ever suit up for the Sixers once?
Not that I remember.
I don't think he did. And then the Magic, I mean, you get Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, and Vucevic. You make the playoffs like once or twice, and then I guess one of the picks you get when you eventually flipped Vucevic to Chicago turned into Franz Wagner. So I guess Orlando got the best of it, but man, it took a while.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget because Dwight wasn't great for the Lakers, but he was considered the best center in the NBA, and you could even say he was the best big man. Like in terms of centers, who else was even up there? Andrew Bynum?
Brooke Lopez?
Yeah, it was a pretty weak center position.
Young Boogie, maybe?
Yeah, and sure there was other good power forwards. You had Blake Griffin, you had Tim Duncan, you had LaMarcus, you had Kevin Love, you had those guys, but it was tough to argue there was a better big in the NBA at this moment than Dwight Howard.
Yeah, I mean, he was a guaranteed like 18 and 13 every single night, was one of, if not the best defensive players in the NBA. Even though they were giving up Bynum, who was a good big in his own right, it was still seen as a very substantial upgrade. And the Lakers filled out the roster with, you know, some free agency signings and some draft picks, you know, your Jody Meekses, your Robert Sacres, you know, real difference makers. But, you know, they were going to boast a starting five of 5 former All-Stars with one coming off the bench when you got, you know, Nash, Kobe, Artest, Gasol, Dwight, Jamison. Had the highest payroll in the league, had some sky-high expectations.
I thought they'd be good, a lot of star power, but I was riding with LeBron at the time. I didn't think anyone was beating the Heat.
Yeah, the Lakers were considered the second favorite in the West, just behind Oklahoma City, had the 3rd highest win-loss over-under in the NBA behind Miami and Oklahoma City. And the season started rather ominously. They went 0-8 in the preseason, lost their first 4 games by 27, 18, 13, and 34. And interestingly enough, Dwight Howard, who, lest we forget, was just coming off back surgery in April to repair a herniated disc, was playing in the preseason. Now, I kind of get why. I mean, he was coming off back surgery. He was not going to be in playing shape. He was going to have a short training camp regardless. So, you know, you play a little bit in the preseason, try to get your lungs back and, you know, get back into playing shape. On the other hand, he was coming back early from back surgery. Back surgery that a lot of people think probably should have kept him out till like at least Christmas. And he was ready for opening night. I mean, hindsight is obviously 2020, but given the way the rest of his career went, probably was not the best idea for him to come back this early.
And that might not have even been the biggest concern for the Lakers because they were just ass in the preseason. I mean, in their 4th game against Utah, to give you some context, Kobe scores 23 in the 3rd quarter by himself, classic Kobe, and the Lakers still get outscored in the quarter 36-24 and lose the game by 34. Still, everyone on the team, you know, they weren't concerned. You know, it's just preseason. Sometimes teams are awful in the preseason, they win the championship, so nobody was really concerned. But then the actual season started and they were still ass. They started the season with 3 straight losses, a loss at home to Dallas, on the road against Portland, and then at home against the Clippers. And their first loss against the Mavericks, Dwight logs 19 and 10. I mean, that's not bad, but shoots 3 of 14 from the free throw line. Never a good free throw shooter, but that's pretty bad. He fouls out and they lose 99-91. And then their second game against the Blazers, we obviously remember this one. Nash suffers a non-displaced fracture in his leg. He was expected to miss at least a week, but that 38-year-old body was not holding up. He misses a month and a half.
That's what happens when you're old, man. Shit takes longer to heal. Finally got their first win in their 4th game of the season at home against the Pistons, but they would drop their next game on the road against Utah to fall to 1-4. It was at this point that they made the decision to fire Mike Brown. Now, this firing I think was seen as pretty harsh because they were only 5 games into the season. They were trying to learn and adjust to a new offensive style. Apparently, Mike Brown had implemented a very complex version of the Princeton offense, and he was taking a lot of heat for that. So, you know, they were still getting used to a new system. They still had all these new pieces. They were trying to figure out how to play together, right? But they were 1-4. Their defense was terrible. Who could have expected their defense being terrible when you have Nash, Gasol, Kobe, Jody Meeks, and Antoine Jamison in your lineup? And also, I mean, this is the Lakers. It is an organization not renowned for their patience with their players or coaches.
And of course, the main speculation was bring back Phil. I mean, he had so much success for the Lakers in the past, and who better to lead this team, to lead Kobe and a star big man than Phil Jackson. And there were loud "We Want Phil" chants ringing out in Staples Center during their next 2 games.
who and what they had. The crowd is yelling, "We want Phil," as in we want Phil Jackson.
And they did speak to him. He requested 2 days to, consider the role, to come back, just take some time to think about it. Obviously, that's completely fair. Bit of a miscommunication there. The Lakers thought he was going to take his time to, decide if he wanted to take the job, and they could continue the head coaching search. So the next day, they hire Mike D'Antoni after a unanimous decision by the front office. Come on now.
Yeah, apparently the front office felt that D'Antoni's, fast-paced 7 seconds or less system would make him, quote, a great fit for this roster. That is like being like, oh, Mike Leach would be a great fit for Navy, who runs the triple option. It's like, no, this is oil and water in basketball terms. Like, Mike D'Antoni's a good coach. There were good players on this roster. They do not fit together at all. Like, I get D'Antoni was close with Nash from their time in Phoenix, and I get he was close with Kobe from their time with Team USA, but man, talk about a miscalculation. D'Antoni's first game in charge of the Lakers, though, they did win 95-90 against Brooklyn, but they then proceeded to lose 9 of their next 12 games. Their offense did improve pretty significantly, as most D'Antoni teams do, but their defense also, like most D'Antoni teams do, took a pretty big step back. Their offense wasn't perfect, though. They were still trying to figure out the best ways to play Dwight and Powell together, and it was around mid-season that they also started to pick up some injuries. Nash, as we mentioned, that broken leg, he missed 24 games. Gasol, who had been benched by D'Antoni a couple times, he missed a couple weeks with knee issues. They were 15-16 after losing a game on New Year's Day to Philadelphia.
And then it was around this time that Kobe tweeted a picture of him and Dwight, like basically mock fighting with D'Antoni in the middle. And this tweet was mocking a report of a recent altercation between Dwight and Kobe after their New Year's loss to Philadelphia. And it was meant to dispel the notions, just like playing up to it, nothing too much going on here if you can laugh about it. But, it still didn't fully answer the questions, and the results did not improve whatsoever. In fact, they got much worse. They dropped 10 of their next 12 after that loss to Philly, put them all the way down to 17-25 after a loss to Memphis, and they were 12th seed in the Western Conference at the time, 4 games behind the Blazers for the 8th seed. And keep in mind, there's no play-in. You can't sneak into the 10th seed, win a couple games, and still make the playoffs. You either make that 8th seed or you're not making the playoffs whatsoever.
Yeah, and around this time, D'Antoni's brilliant idea to fix this team's defense was to have Kobe guard the other team's best players, which, Kobe at that point might have been the best defensive player that they have, but again, he's 34 years old. He's already playing a ton of minutes. He's running up and down the court because of this fast-paced offensive system, and now you're like, hey, Kobe, go guard Kevin Durant, go guard LeBron, go guard Stephen Curry. Like, I know Kobe was probably up for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was just like, F it, I'll guard anyone, but with a guy like Kobe who has the mindset he does, you almost have to, protect him from himself.
On top of that, they were second in pace, which is crazy because the average age of their starting lineup was 33. We'll talk about the Kobe injury later, but wonder why that happened. This might have had something to do with it, but they did finally start to turn the season around after that loss to the Grizzlies. They go 13-5 over the next 18 games, claw all the way back to 500, but not all was well for the Lakers. Gasol missed nearly 2 months after he tore his plantar fascia in his right foot. Dwight would re-aggravate a shoulder injury. Now, Kobe did want him to play through it, which is not shocking whatsoever, but Dwight's response was, dude's not a doctor, that's just his opinion.
Kobe would play through a gunshot wound if he could.
Yeah, 100%.
It's not surprising he would say that at all, but read the room a little bit here, Kobe, okay? I get it. You're the ultimate competitor. You're like Michael Jordan light, but maybe take a step back on this one. Still, though, both Kobe and Dwight made the All-Star game as starters, despite the Lakers being 4 games under 500 at the All-Star break. And hilariously, at the All-Star break, Charles Barkley declared that the Lakers' chances of making the playoffs was, quote, -17.
They had 0 chance before those guys hurt. Now it's -17. They got no chance of making the playoffs.
They can't make it. The chance of making the playoffs is -17.
Which, he was actually wrong. So,
yeah, he was.
Another Charles guarantee gone awry. But a bad season for the Lakers got even worse when on February 18th, the day after the All-Star game, longtime owner Jerry Buss passed away after an 18-month battle with cancer. They wore the JB commemorative patches on their jerseys for the rest of the season. But like I said earlier, it just made an already, tumultuous and difficult season that much more difficult.
And it was around this time when you had some conspiracy theories popping up that the NBA was pushing for this huge name team, the Lakers, with all these stars to make the playoffs. And goddamn, you look at some of the clips, they got away with just so many blatant blown calls. Maybe the refs, it was just coincidence or something, but we specifically remember a game against the Blazers. Metta World Peace hacks the shit out of Batum. They can't overturn the call because it was out of bounds off Batum. Kobe slaps Dame on a potential game-tying shot. There was other moments in that game. There were some moments against the Mavericks, the Warriors. I mean, they were pushing for the Lakers in all these commercials, like playoff commercials, hyping up the playoffs, always mention the Lakers.
And the Lakers weren't even in the playoffs yet. They hadn't clinched their spot. They wouldn't clinch until the last day of the season. And in all reality, probably nothing happened, but I mean, it's fun to speculate about this kind of stuff.
It was a little bit weird, at least at the time as a Blazer fan, especially after that game.
Oh yeah, after that game, I was fucking pissed because we were fighting for that playoff spot too. I was red hot after that game. This was the point in the season though where Kobe was basically just willing the Lakers to wins when he could. I mean, he had that game against Toronto where he hit 3 crazy threes down the stretch to send the game into overtime. Lakers would prevail by 2 in OT. And I mean, he was still playing at an all NBA level, but he was second in the NBA in minutes per game at 34 years old. He was only 0.1 behind Luol Deng. And in April, when the Lakers were really pushing for that final playoff spot, D'Antoni actually reduced the Lakers lineup to just a 7-man rotation. And in April, he played Kobe a ridiculous 45 minutes a night, including 4 games where he played 47 minutes or more.
I mean, it is kind of sad because this insane toll on his body is what ruined him and led to the Achilles injuries. Like, this doesn't happen. Maybe we get a couple more good years of Kobe, but he did give us one last insane performance, and it was, besides the 60-point bomb he drops in his final game, we did shoot like shit. I mean, people don't want to talk about it, but he did. Still amazing, not gonna hate. But this was the last insane performance of like his main prime. We were in the building. He drops 47 on the Blazers. It was a duel versus him and rookie Dame. And I remember, I don't know if there's any moment I've been more pissed leaving the Moda Center because he got MVP chants, and not just MVP chants where, you know, you can kind of hear them.
They were loud.
Echoing around the arena.
And if the Lakers keep getting the ball into the hands of free throw shooters.
Dude, what's the tune all year? It's never been easy. It's never.
Yeah, we did not partake, but I mean, you can't say he didn't deserve them.
Oh, he did.
47 playing all 48 minutes. That's classic Kobe right there.
Mamba mentality.
Yeah, exactly. But it was the next game that Kobe's 34-year-old body finally gave out on him. It was the third to last game of the season for the Lakers, which makes it all the more heartbreaking because they were so close to the finish line. But Kobe tears his Achilles with 3 minutes left trying to drive on Harrison Barnes. He had seemingly hurt something earlier in the third quarter. He actually went down briefly, but stayed in the game, played deep until the fourth quarter when, you know, the injury happened. Still was able to shoot both of his free throws, which is fucking heroic, shooting 2 free throws on a torn Achilles. But as the Lakers fouled to get him off the court, their color commentator, Stu Lance, he actually basically just called that Kobe just tore his Achilles. Like, he's just like, gotta get him off. Like, that's the Achilles. Then he like stops himself. He's like, oh, I shouldn't say that. It's like, man, it's too late. It already happened. I mean, Lakers won the game despite 47 from Steph, but this is the textbook definition of winning the battle and losing the war.
I mean, to be fair to him, there's about 2 or 3 injuries that would keep Kobe off the court.
Yeah.
So Achilles was one of them. I mean, yeah, like I said, just all the wear and tear on his body, like, it makes sense. And it sucks because the run he was on was just absolutely crazy. And I kind of wanted to see, like, you keep this mentality, the scoring into the playoffs, like, who knows what could have happened. The Lakers would still make the playoffs. They won their final 2 games. Jazz lose to Memphis on the final day, and they do clinch a playoff berth, and awaiting them was the 58-win San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, and normally this would be the part of the video where we'd like, you know, go game by game, break down every playoff game, you know, the big moments, the back and forth and all that stuff. Not gonna do that in this video because the Lakers got fucking bodied in this series. I mean, like, with Kobe off the floor, he had been such a huge part of their ability to score the ball. So with him gone, it's not a surprise that they really struggled to score the ball against San Antonio, who had the 3rd best defensive rating that season. I mean, they scored 79 and 91 in 2 losses in San Antonio to start the series. And then when they returned to LA, things got even worse. They scored 89 in a 31-point game 3 loss and 82 in a 21-point loss in game 4, a game that Dwight Howard very infamously got ejected from and then was yelling at Mitch Kupchak on the way out. Now, Dwight has gone on record saying he was yelling at Mitch Kupchak to like talk to the refs because Dwight felt like the Spurs were being, you know, overly aggressive, getting away with a lot of fouls and whatnot. But given the way that season had gone, you know, uncertainty about Dwight's future in LA, the media ran with it that he was basically cussing out Mitch Kupchak and telling him like, you know, fuck this team, essentially. Like, fuck all this shit. I'm done here.
Given how everything ended, that's part what happened. Lakers swept by San Antonio, ending one of the most disappointing seasons in NBA history. And now we got to break down the legacy for this team, and really it's just a legacy of failure. Like I said in the intro, like when I think of failed super teams, I think of this team. They're one of the most disappointing teams in NBA history. Yeah, they were old, but Kobe was still at the top of his game. Like we said, those performances were incredible. Gasol was still good. Artest was a decent role player, and Dwight was the best big in the NBA and still had some solid seasons with the Rockets after this. So what went wrong? I mean, kind of obvious. Absolutely no defense, no youth, no three-point shooting, a coach that didn't fit whatsoever. Really, the question is, like, why did everyone think this team would be so good?
Well, the answer is they have Kobe and Dwight is the answer. Like, okay, 45 wins in a 7th seed, that's way too bad. Like, you could think like they weren't going to be a championship contender or anything, but you'd think at least like top 4 seed in the West, second round at the absolute worst. For me though, what really went wrong is the coach. Like, Mike D'Antoni is not a bad coach. I mean, I think he's shown that in Phoenix and in Houston. He can produce really good results when he has players that fit his system. That was not this team. He has his 7 seconds or less, push the pace, shoot lots of threes. That system doesn't fucking work with a team of old dudes who are injury prone and when your best 3-point shooter is Jody Meeks. Were they ever going to compete for a championship? I'm not sure. I don't think they were better than Oklahoma City or San Antonio. They obviously weren't better than Miami, but had they just waited, made a better coaching choice, even if they don't get Phil Jackson, if they could get anyone else other than Mike D'Antoni, I think they could have maybe made a little bit more noise in the Western Conference. Also, don't play Kobe 48 minutes a night and cause him to suffer a career-ending injury. Like, seems obvious now, but don't do that. That's the video, guys. How will you remember the 2013 Lakers? Love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving it a like, as it really does help us out. And while you're here, why not check out some of our other videos as well? And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.